Our celebration of art and creativity in the modern sense is the acquisition of goods, for better or worse. Like we only in the Western sense see ourselves as creative when we go to buy something. Oh, you want to be an artist? Here's the paintbrush to buy. Oh, you want to be a dancer? Here's the shoes.
This is the Live, Lead, Last podcast.
Welcome to the Live, Lead, Last podcast, where we help you live with intention, lead with purpose, and leave a lasting impact. I'm James Duvall, and I'm so glad you're joining me today. Before we dive in, I want to remind you about the 5-day leadership reset at liveleadlast.com/reset. If you've been feeling stuck, overwhelmed, or just ready for fresh clarity in your leadership, this reset will help you refocus, strengthen your priorities, and lead with renewed confidence. It's a simple yet powerful step towards becoming the leader you're called to be. Today, we're talking about a topic that's shaping not just business, but culture itself, the intersection of culture and commerce. Here's why this matters for leaders. Whether you're in business, ministry, or the nonprofit space, research shows that over 60% of consumers under the age of 45 are shopping not as an activity, but as an extension of their identity. What people buy is becoming who they are. And that means leaders who understand culture's pull on commerce and commerce's influence on culture are better equipped to shape the future with integrity and impact. To guide us through this conversation, I'm joined by my good friend, Phillip Jackson. Phillip is the co-founder and CEO of Future Commerce. He leads a media company that connects over 100,000 executives to the idea that commerce shapes culture. Through award-winning podcasts, research, and experiences like the Vision Summit at the Museum of Modern Art in New York City, a 2-time Adobe Image MC, and 4-time Adobe Spotlight awardee, Phillip has built digital retail for global brands including Harper's Bazaar, American Greetings, Nestle Health Sciences, and Marc Ecko. Beyond business, he invests deeply in people. He chairs the board of 1909, a nonprofit accelerator supporting hundreds of entrepreneurs, and he mentors founders in strategy, growth, and storytelling. And if that's not enough, he's an ultra-marathon runner, musician, and family man with a mission to uplift others by fusing culture, commerce, creativity, and community. I can't wait for you to hear this conversation, so let's jump in. Phil, man, it is so great to have you back on the Live, Lead, Last podcast. Thanks for taking some time today.
Thanks for having me, James.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that you were actually one of the first guests when we started the Live, Lead, Last podcast way back in 2020, episode 8. And we talked about your health journey. You had lost like 154 pounds. You've become an avid runner. So before we jump into Future Commerce and what you're doing today, give us a quick recap on how you're doing in your health journey.
Yeah. Well, I've kept the weight off and for over 8 years now, which is kind of an incredible feat for me. And, go back and listen to that episode to sort of hear, my backstory. One of the amazing things is since that date, that I ran 40 for 40, which was like my 40th birthday. I ran 40 miles. Since then, I've done multiple 100K races, which are, for those who use the imperial system is, 63 miles. And trail races and whatnot. And I found a community in trail racing. I've also found, not my physical limit necessarily, which I feel like I still have a lot left in me. But I definitely found sort of the balance in my family limit. It's like how much of, the physical endurance sport, I can invest in at this point in my career and my family life. And I've also kind of realized too that, I have to do this for a long time. Mm-hmm. So 5 years hence, I'm like, I want to really make this the rest of my life. Yeah. And so, I'm sort of finding that balance still of, do I need to do 2 to 3 races a year or is one enough? So I have a 50K race, which is like a little over 31 miles. And that's at the end of the year in December, which I think is a healthier balance than 2 or 3 races a year. And I think it's a more reasonable distance, I guess, whatever reasonable is in, a normal person's book. But yeah, it's going great.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm, obviously an avid cyclist. I don't run a lot, but I have made it a challenge for me this year to run the Palm Beach Marathon, full marathon.
Hey.
in December. So I got to start training. So I might need to get some training tips from you to know how to get in there. So
it's a good one. It's nice and flat.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. We're actually partnering with A21, an organization, and they're bringing a big fundraising thing to that thing. So I thought I'll jump into there and join them on that. So it should be fun.
Have you run that distance before?
No. I've trained a couple times for half marathons, and back in 2015, I actually broke my hip while I was training for a half marathon. So I have 3 screws in my right hip now. And then after I recovered, I thought I would try to do that same half marathon again. So I trained, I was ready to do it, and they canceled it the week before. So I figured, go big or go home, right? So a full marathon is what I'm doing in December. So it should be fun.
We'll get like a little crew for you at the finish line. That'll be a big journey for you.
Yeah, it will be. It will be. The journey starts with one step, right? So I got to actually get some running shoes and start running. So, hey, it's
40,000 steps. It's a lot of steps.
It is true. It's always interesting to me when I watch the journey of people that I know, and just not surprised, but just like, what time does in people's lives and decisions, and even like going back to that decision 8 years ago to radically change your health journey. I know that's also been a radical change in even how you lead as a leader, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner. And so we've known each other for at least 20 years. And so to watch your journey in the last several years, to reconnect again on a regular basis and just hear what you're doing and the scale of what you're doing is pretty cool. Because, as I understand it, in this space of commerce and technology, and I mean, you're like a major player. Like, you're up there. I mean,
I like to think so.
Yeah. Right. And so you're doing a lot of stuff. It's not just about selling things, but you're actually kind of combining culture and commerce, right? So can you give us a kind of a recap of your journey of how you ended up, merging those two, studying commerce and culture, and what led to Future Commerce?
Yeah. Well, just a little background. I co-founded Future Commerce 9 years ago. So we're coming up on our 10th anniversary. And, we began as a podcast, a lot like this. Mm-hmm. We wanted to have a conversation almost a decade ago that wasn't being had in our ecosystem, which at the time was pure e-commerce. Brands were getting online, which, we were at that point almost a little over a decade into the e-commerce ecosystem, e-commerce journey. E-commerce back then was more than just, the Amazon story. It was really just representing your brand online, and the biggest companies in the world were just figuring out how to go online for the very first time. And I was working for a large digital agency who, they had a prestigious name in the software ecosystem and building those very large, like global brands, e-commerce websites. I was a well-known developer and sort of a highly sought after software developer in building teams that built those, big branded sites. So I was already sort of well known in the ecosystem for building teams and for giving really good advice. I had a bit of a speaking career prior to Future Commerce in the technology space around a particular software stack that was aligned with the Adobe suite of software. And so I sort of came into Future Commerce with a built-in audience. One of the things that I realized, though, is that there are behaviors, sort of like, I don't know if you know what a cargo cult is. You never heard that term?
No.
Now, this is a thing that, has its roots in British colonial sort of era, where in World War II, you had, British colonies, and you had, British troops that were being deployed all over the world to fight, Nazi forces. And, they were being deployed forward all over the world. They were going even into island nations that had never seen technology before. And there was a cult that was formed on one of these island nations where you had the British would bring in their planes, and they would bring their planes in. They would bring in and build a runway. They would bring in a air traffic control tower, and with it came all sorts of resources, right? And they came in and brought wealth and prosperity. Well, at the end of the war, they pulled out and left, and with it goes all the prosperity, and with it goes all of the resources. Well, if you're a nation who's never seen that sort of a thing before, you think it's the runway and you think it's the air traffic control tower that brought those things with you. So, a cargo cult is a sort of a colloquial term that people use that defines the thing that happened afterward. What do the sort of island nations do? They build with bamboo a runway, and they build with bamboo a lookout tower and a air traffic control, and with bamboo the sort of like headphones, and they sort of cosplay all day, every day, the act of playing as if they were still in that wartime to try to bring back all the prosperity back to their island. And sort of the cult-like cultural behavior of these performative acts that people have is something that I see all over the place. It happens in consumer industries. It happens even within business. And I see people with these cargo cult-like behaviors. We do things all the time, especially in business. We don't know why we do them. And we think that they have an outcome or an effect, but we don't have any proof that they do. And I started to see this after 10 plus years in our ecosystem. And I wanted to have a conversation about that, about the cultural behaviors of the commerce industry. And nobody was having that. Every conversation was about how to move the bottom line. And so future commerce was really about trying to have a different conversation about not technology necessarily, but about how the technological shifts and the changes that were happening would change those cultural behaviors. And so that's what we started with. And today we are having, I think, a very profound shift because our subscribership is global. Future Commerce has, over 180,000 executives that pay attention to our media all over the world. And, that is today newsletters, podcasts, research. We have a thriving publication and print division, and we host summits, and we have professional networking, and we have enrichment and development through digital education and workshops. And so through all of that, we are helping executives and operators within retail and marketplaces and e-commerce businesses to see around the next corner.
Okay, so that was amazing. I never heard of that cargo cult piece, but it totally makes sense because everybody's trying to find the next little thing. If we do social media ads, that's going to be the thing, but they don't have the theory or the why behind it. So I'm interested. So like future commerce, it's connecting culture and commerce, but how do you actually do it? So you have all these, newsletters and so forth, but what does that really look like for a business leader or executive that's going to, reference your material? Does you just research and put out the trends, or what's that look like?
Sure. Well, there's a number of ways that we do it. I think there's the tangible piece is we perform research. That is one way that we do it. So we have a research and insights division where we actually speak to a number of different types of audiences. So we will conduct our own primary research, which is rare, by the way. A lot of organizations like ours, which would be either considered to be like news media outlets, independent media outlets, or editorial outlets, they only republish other people's research and they add their own commentary to it. Okay. We actually perform original research, which means we have to come in with a hypothesis and a thesis, go test it. Survey development is its own art and science. Very proud of us for having done that for the last 5+ years. So we'll go talk to consumers. We'll develop consumer panels and studies, and then we synthesize or interpret the results. And that is a very laborious and expensive process that many organizations don't undergo. And we go to market with our partners to do that. So we will partner up with organizations who want to understand their customers. And that can be a software company. It could be a consumer brand. It could be an apparel company. It could be the world's largest, luxury brands who want to understand what the future is going to look like. And this, in the term of art in this industry, is called foresight. So insight is what's happening right now with your customers, and foresight is, what's going to happen in the future. And we see ourselves as a sort of a form or an extension of foresight, that it isn't jaded by whatever is happening inside of the culture of your organization. You can come to us and we're going to give you the perspective of, well, we speak to lots of people. We see lots of trends. We talk to lots of other brands, and we talk to lots of software companies who have lots of brand customers. And so we have a different perspective on the world. So that is one way that we do it. We also speak to business leaders. And I think that this is one of the real differentiators for us, is that we host about 20 business leader focused salons a year, where we get executives in a room for 3 to 4 hours and break bread with them and get them to network with each other. These people get to know each other and they create community together. And this is one of the more powerful ways that we gather intelligence, because business leaders, when they're sitting together and they're talking about their challenges, are less guarded and more open, and they're more ready to share what their actual issues are than when you're sitting on a survey development call.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, much of the insights work and so much of the foresight work that happens in this ecosystem requires compensation. And so many of the times you can't get an executive to answer a study or a survey unless you're giving them some sort of an incentive. They will come to dinner with you and speak for hours for free. So we have found a number of ways to unlock our ability to sort of see into the future by hearing what's happening right now and seeing how business leaders, executives at the world's most recognizable brands are thinking about the future. And then we take our unique perspective on what I would say is like the humanities, like sociology, anthropology, philosophy, psychology. And we take that and we sort of apply that into everything that we're hearing, and we sort of synthesize that. We use judicious use of AI on all of our inputs, and I feel like in our small team of 10, we have the impact of what a large analyst firm of 100, 120 might have had a decade ago. So that's sort of what Future Commerce can do from like a strategic or a tactical perspective as like an output for a customer of ours. But if you were to just come to the website, we have free resources all day, every day, from newsletters to podcasts, and you can get access to those and get insight all day, every day, 7 days a week.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. Have a lot of things going around my mind right now that I love to go on rabbit trails. But let me start here. Before we started recording, you mentioned that you have some like recent data. So could you share like some of that data that people would find from Future Commerce that you're bringing into the marketplace?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So we have a most recent redevelopment or a refresh of a annual study that we've been doing for the last few years. What began as sort of new attitudes around AI for the consumer. You'll remember that AI was brand new in 2022. So I remember where I was. Very few people will remember where they were when ChatGPT came out. I remember because it was at the tail end of an event that we threw at Art Basel Miami Beach when I got access to ChatGPT. So it was November of 2022. And I remember the feeling of, I wonder if I can get it to play a game with me if I just define the rules. So I made up a fictional card game. I told it the rules, and it played a game with me. And that was the thing that blew my mind, was that I could tell it literally anything and it could keep a train of thought and do it with me.
Yeah.
And that was Chat GPT-3, and that was what now, 3+ years ago?
Yeah.
That was the old days. So we began a few years ago thinking about how this might change the way that people buy and belong. Today, so we pioneered a piece of research a couple of years ago. That piece of research that we're very proud of, that we first came out with, a data point that made some headlines for us was that we found that 91% of people in our study back in the end of 2023 were using AI in their workplace, even if they weren't allowed to. Mm-hmm. And so what we found were that in our study, the adoption rate of AI was if they were using AI in their personal lives, they were using it at work. Almost 9 out of 10 times, if you were using AI, you were using it for your job, even if your company told you weren't allowed to. And I thought that was a really interesting insight, is that there was a lot of people that were a lot more productive than they used to be, even if their corporate policy didn't allow for it. To me, that also told me something else, which was there were going to be people that were able to be more productive as sort of like an element of arbitrage in their company. And that would be a gap that would widen. You would have people that would very suddenly, for the next year or two in their organization, become extraordinarily valuable and possibly work themselves out of a job and go find something else. And that to me represented a new gap of a productivity gap of someone who is powered by AI versus people who weren't. Mm-hmm. So that meant that there was going to be an adoption problem in the workplace. That's not a commerce thing. That was just people who are early adopters of technology versus people who are not. And this is the kind of thing that we found really early on. What we found is that AI also is the most highly rapidly adopted technology that's ever existed. Mm-hmm. Mostly because it is prepackaged into everything. It just winds up into everything. It just gets in your phone. You didn't ask for it. It winds up in Google. It's in Gmail. You didn't ask for it. So it's sort of being thrust upon people. So we've refreshed, James, this study this week, which will be rolling out in the next couple weeks. So I'm giving you a preview of it here, which we're calling the new modes. And what we found is that people now are using this specifically to assist with shopping, and they're using it specifically to get a leg up in their shopping journey. They're using it to find coupons that retailers didn't know still exist on their website. They're using it to find better deals. They're using it to write sob stories for customer service. They're using it to their advantage to make and autopilot their life to a better shopping experience. A few data points that have come out that I think are really powerful. 2 in 3 millennials right now live in a perpetual purchase consideration. This is up 30% year over year. So more millennials now are living in constant consideration of purchase. We don't believe that that's AI driven. We believe that that is just attention economy driven. Mm-hmm. Another data point is for every boomer that is actively shopping, 2 are existing in passive mode. And this is a huge generational gap from millennials to baby boomers, where, millennials are constantly thinking about what to buy. Baby boomers have sort of retired out of that attitude. Another thing to think about, too, is that the majority of people under 45 think of shopping not as an activity, but as a form of their identity. And I think that is something that we and again, this is a very Western mentality. This is mostly US, Canada, and a little bit of UK in our survey. This is something that we probably need to contend with as a society, is that what you buy is who you become. Mm-hmm. And in that way, when we say that we examine at Future Commerce the intersection of culture and commerce, that means that the people in my audience are probably the most important people in culture, because if they can shape what you buy, and it's all that anybody in this culture thinks about, especially the people with the most powerful, purchase power right now, it's all that they think about. And it's, according to this study that we've pioneered, the majority of people under 45 who, by and large have children too, and they're starting to raise these children, they think of shopping as an identity. If you can shape what those people buy, you're kind of shaping the culture writ large, and you're shaping the future generation. Wow. And that's why I think the job to be done is what I'm doing, is trying to guide these leaders into better modes of thought.
That's amazing. Yeah, there's so much there. Was it thinking about that culture piece at the time of this conversation, there's a lot of controversy about an American Eagle ad that's out. I don't know if you've seen that with the Sweeney. She has good genes. And, I was thinking about that, how that plays into the identity thing of shopping. And really, I mean, I saw that their stock is up like 18% since that commercial came out and so forth. And people have really bought into that identity piece of connecting, there's a lot of backlash about it for some reason, but you can see how, I think it's maybe the most aggressive clothing ad that's been out lately that really ties to identity. So that's really interesting. I was also thinking just about like the use of AI. I know one of the pieces that has been interesting to me is I work with a company called Giant, and they've actually built an AI client that, in the personality space that allows people to actually go onto their API and say, hey, I'm meeting with this person and this is their personality type. Help me know how to relate to them. And so this identity piece is not just a commerce thing. It's like AI is really shaping the way that we interact as humans too, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think that is, it's shaping how we interact as humans. And I think we're in the very first, pitches. It's the first, ball that's been thrown in the first inning of the game too. We're in the first application of it. And I'm really interested to understand how that applies to the way that people might be able to proctor that sort of a relationship in the future to proactively tell people, I want to be spoken to this way, or I want to have a relationship with this, with James this way, which today you're being proactive to say, oh, I know this, maybe Giant has this, this capability. In the future, I believe that this is the kind of lens of experience, and this is how we're advising business leaders now. We are not very far away from something that we are calling, the multiplayer brand, where the customer, who, by the way, believes that everything revolves around them, wants the brand to identify with them so heavily that they want the whole of the experience to wrap around the lens of their perspective. They want the whole of the brand's experience to wrap around their lens and viewpoint of the world. And that, to me, feels like something you carry around as a token of your identity that you share with a brand. And in that way, it's highly, highly, highly personalized. And so we couldn't have done that 3 years ago, but it seems like we're very close to being able to do that today. In fact, I am working with a startup right now who just raised a second round of funding. Their whole job is to create a website. When you click on an ad on Instagram, they create a website within a millisecond that only exists for you to shop on, that was created based on the creative that you clicked on the ad on Instagram. And that website does not exist after you check out. It only exists from the moment you click on the ad on Instagram. And it's purpose built for you. That ad is the thing that generates that website, and that website only exists for you, purpose built for you, so that it's perfectly engineered for you, so that you check out. James, purpose built, one of one for you, powered by AI. And that means it's powerful for you, but it also means you can't share that experience with anyone else. You can't send that to anyone else so that they also have that experience. So it's sort of fraught. And I think that we're going to have some bumps along the way.
Yeah, that's really, really fascinating. I'd love to jump into kind of the leadership space a bit, because you do interact with a lot of business leaders, executives from a lot of different spaces, mostly in the commerce space. But what are some of the things that you personally have experienced, maybe even in your own leadership, that have kind of been the differentiators between success and struggling in leadership?
I'll start with my own experience. A clear definition between success and struggle for me has been watching, well, first of all, learning from, other people's mistakes and having watched other folks' failures. I think learning from failures and being well read on those, and learning from case studies, learning from other people's, and being in community with other people and hearing them being honest about their trials. That to me has been a tremendous and very valuable part of my growth. I've had some really great mentorship in that regard. So the owners of the agency that I work for were incredible mentors to me, and they did nothing for 8 years but tell me everything they've ever done wrong. And to me, I think the meta lesson there is being able to admit and recognize your own failings and your own shortcomings. I think that we live in an age right now, especially a social media fueled age, where, I don't know if it's pride, I'm not sure what it is. We are sort of goaded by the algorithm every day to put on an air of arrogance and haughtiness that, we have to front all day, every day about how awesome we are. In fact, AI, going back to the AI conversation, it bigs me up, tells me how awesome I am. And I think that we, in reality, I look at myself and I self-examine, and I'm pretty much nothing but shortcomings. I feel like I fall short a lot. So effective leaders, I've found, learn a lot from and delegate a lot to people who are experts. They hire people better than themselves. They, are humble in that way, and recognizing that they can only go so far. Something that you said to me many years ago, I've taken with me, which is, you'd said, maybe I'm paraphrasing here, but, your mission was to make your ceiling someone else's floor, something to that effect.
Yeah.
I've sort of adopted that for myself as well, is that I have a limit. There's a point at which I will not exceed, and there's a point at which I won't be able to grow anymore. I will continue to try to push beyond that point, but I should also be able to recognize that there are people that start at that point. Why not surround myself and go in search of people like that? Because that's how I'm going to be able to go much further. And so I think from a leadership team perspective, I've seen really, really excellent teams who have a lot of folks who cover their gaps and who are not ashamed to say so. Yeah. So I think that's sort of the 3 or 4 qualities that I've seen quite a bit. And it's represented over and over and over and over again on effective teams. Also, one other thing I'll say, effective teams tend to stay together. They move with each other from organization to organization. That is a very interesting quality that I've seen over the last 20 years, is that when one team member goes, they tend to eventually wind up at the next place together too. They like working with each other. Yeah. And that's, I think, a rare quality, but you see it in very, very large enterprise, is that it's almost like a SWAT team. Like, these were elite armed forces. These people have been in the trenches together. Yeah. They trust each other. They know their roles, and they go everywhere together. And I think that's a pretty underutilized quality in the business world.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, a lot there, that idea of that your ceiling becomes somebody else's floor. I don't know if you find this, but for myself, I really had to be very intentional to continue to raise my ceiling. And I think sometimes leaders can get so entrenched in the minutia and the work and the chaos and the whirlwind of running a business and so forth, that they forget the greatest asset to a business is actually them as a leader. And I think I found that the more I raised in leadership responsibility or authority or level, I had to be more and more intentional of continuing to develop myself, because nobody else is developing me at that point, right? Like, very few people can actually speak into your life as a CEO or an executive or a business owner. And so if you're not surrounding yourself with people that are going to push you and shape you, and then also doing the self work to continue to raise that ceiling. Well, with AI and these things we've already talked about, a lot of young leaders, their floor starting out, education or know-how, knowledge is already going to be higher than a lot of leaders who are running businesses, because of just, as a 54-year-old guy, I look at my 20-year-old daughter who is going to have a lot more advantages already of knowledge and so forth than me. So I think that is a real challenge for leaders. I was thinking about this too with future commerce. I think a lot of times and maybe this isn't true in every space, but like the creative voice is oftentimes not heard in the business plan or the business movement. Yeah. And I think it's genius what future commerce is doing is you guys are really becoming kind of the creative voice with legitimacy and, weight behind you that other companies can actually come and have that voice represented in a very high level of that innovation, that kind of future radar of like early warning system of like, here's what's coming. You need to know this. Yeah. So I think that just even for a leader to surround themselves with knowledge of even like what future commerce does is going to help raise that lid of leadership. Right.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Well, something Jackie had said to me some time ago, we've been married 21 years now, and she's wiser than me, by a long way.
Aren't they all? I mean, we've all outkicked our coverage, right?
Yeah. She'd asked me last year, and I took this to heart, and I use this now. I ask other leaders this, especially because other people are coming to me now and asking me for advice a lot. But she had put something into language that I felt like, man, I wish I'd had the way to articulate this years ago. But she asked me last year when I was going through something, she says, "Are you in stress? Are you in distress?" Mm. And I was sort of a mess. I was like, "Is there a difference?" She's like, "Stress increases your capacity.
Right.
If you can handle it. Distress decreases your capacity."
Right.
Right. And she's like, "I know you, and like you thrive in sort of stress, like you can handle stress. Mm-hmm. You take it on willingly and you grow through it. Distress, you shut down." And she's like, "Which one is it?" And to me, I had never had language for that. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs in particular, I work with a lot of entrepreneurs through a nonprofit, and we do a lot of mentorship of entrepreneurs. I think a lot of entrepreneurs spend a lot of time in distress. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that we've had a lot of language up to this point of sort of sussing out which one is which. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of us need to realize which ones are the ones that increase our capacity, which are the things that decrease our capacity. And I would say a lot of mistakes that we make in leadership capacity are taking on too many of the things that are the ones that decrease our capacity for growth.
Yeah, that's really good. So I recently saw a LinkedIn post from Patrick Lencioni where he wrote, "CEOs need to declare for themselves and the people they lead that their marriages and families are more important than their businesses." And he's absolutely right. Leaders who are faithful at home are more grounded, trustworthy, and effective in the workplace. That's why we created the 5 Voices for Marriage course. In it, you and your spouse will discover your natural leadership voices, learn how to communicate with deep understanding, and build a stronger foundation for both your family and your future. Because strong marriages create strong leaders, and strong leaders build strong organizations. So start your journey today at liveleadlast.com/marriage course. I want to turn the corner to your creative side because a few years ago, you started creating these annual journals that Future Commerce puts out. And I want you to talk a little bit about the concept behind why you do it and what they're for. And then tell us a little bit about your new one, Lure.
So, okay. The why for me was a strategic move. We, in 2022, were looking around and there was this thought leadership like maxim that was going around in our industry because there was a company that had raised I want to say it was $80 or $100 million to give everybody on planet Earth a newsletter. It was a company called Substack. And the idea was everybody needs to launch a paid newsletter. And at that point in time, a lot of journalists from very well-known, like actual journalistic publications from the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, and other magazines were peeling off from actual journalistic outlets and taking their readership with them. And people were going and paying not for an entire magazine, but they were paying $5, $7, $12 a month for a single writer's, once a day, 200, 300 word musing.
Yeah.
And to me, that marked a wild turning point in a bunch of things. The attention economy, the subscription economy. I am drowning in newsletter content already in my inbox. Yeah. I don't know about you. There is so much great thought that exists in the world, and 95% of it goes missing in my inbox. And I have every great intention of looking at most of it, but I'm never going to look at almost any of it. I don't have time. I also spend a good amount of time looking at my inbox, and some things I will queue and leave on read for weeks, if not a month at a time, hoping to get to it because it looks super interesting. I'll open it, I'll click it, I'll leave it in a tab. I have even, James, printed things out and left it on my desk because I really intend to take a look at it, but it only exists in digital form. And I thought very deeply about how often, putting out a newsletter myself 2 to 3 times a week at that point, writing 2,000 and 3,000 word missives, how many people must be missing things that I'm writing?
Yeah.
I have a background in print layout and publication from 15 years prior to that. And I thought, do you know, it is so easy for people to fire up a newsletter now, and it's so easy for people to write, especially with AI. Mm-hmm. Do you know how hard it is to make a physical piece of print with atoms? Electrons are easy, atoms are hard. And I thought it would be extraordinarily defining in my space to create not a tiny little book, not something that you can do a little web to print something, not a cheap little newsprint throwaway, not a zine, an actual large format journal, like 8 by 11, 250 pages.
Yeah.
And so we set out to do that. And I thought it would be an annual journal from a lot of these like larger institutions is a thing that exists, especially in like the scientific orgs. What if we did it in our space? And what if we did it in the most creative way possible? We commissioned a lot of photography for that particular event, and we explored the like Jungian archetypes, but through our own lens, which is, we always have our own creative bent on something. We called it Archetypes. You can check it out. It's archetypesjournal.com. We did it in partnership with Adobe. We had an event at Art Basel to celebrate it. That event sort of celebrated the archetypes in modern dance, which was wild because try to get e-commerce people to come to a modern dance event. They won't. So you don't tell them that you're going to do that. That journal, we went really, really hard on. I'm a design and print nerd. We had like 4 different, paper types in the print. I won't go too heavy on sort of the details of it, but it is an extraordinarily like heavy amount of investment and an incredible amount of work to put something like that together. It culminates like 6 months of work to create something like that. Mm-hmm. And, you create physical dies to make the cover, and those things get used once. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, we made that, and it blew people's minds. And they said, why doesn't this say volume 1 on it? Like, where's volume 2? And that's when I knew we had something.
That's cool.
And so that was year 1. People thought, well, they've created archetypes. That's the name of their journal. And I said, no, I want people to continue to guess what we're always up to. I'm not going to be put into a box. And I have my ability to continue to ideate and create is unbounded. I am not done creating. Like, archetypes is just one thing. That's one thing to explore. I have plenty of frameworks to explore. So for Art Basel 2023, we created Muses, which was our next journal. A whole shelf of these up here on the camera. If you were to see it.
They're beautiful pieces of art too.
Yeah. So we have the next one was Muses, and that the 9 muses of Greek mythology was that was a celebration of creativity. What would the modern muses be through a commercial lens? And again, this is maybe a little cynical, but if the Greek muses were a celebration of art and creativity, I actually believe that our celebration of art and creativity in the modern sense is the acquisition of goods, for better or worse. Like we only in the Western sense see ourselves as creative when we go to buy something. Oh, you want to be an artist? Here's the paintbrush to buy. Oh, you want to be a dancer? Here's the shoes, right? And that is an unfortunate reality. So it's actually a fair bit of criticism in this piece that we wrote. And, we had people like the creative director of Five Below, who is a MFA and a graduate from with a degree in ceramics, who was so moved by this piece and a subject of the study in our write-up there that he left his job at Five Below and went and created a company around ceramics called Ahava Memorials today, which today is a death care company that puts people's ashes into ceramics and memorializes them. So the impact that we have on creating pieces like this is like truly incredible. And this year, our annual journal, very proud of it. It's called Lore. I'll hold it up on the screen. Yeah. And this is the stories that we tell. We ask the question, you can see it here emblazoned on the ribbon. It says, do you write the story or is it already written? And for the theology nerds, yes, I'm having a crisis of free will. My question here really is, how much of the consumer culture are we really in control of, and how much are brands really able to convince us to part with in our resources? Are consumers in control at all? Are you able to make free will choices of what you like? I don't know that that's true. I've seen now over 20 years how much we're able to shape what people buy, what we're able to part with from a monetary perspective, and what we like. And I believe today, now more than ever, that consumers are able to be programmed. And actually, brands, conversely, their histories and their stories and the way that we remember them are also able to be programmed from the community. And so I think there's this really interesting tension between the consumer and the brand and the stories that we tell about each other. And that's what this 280-page journal is about this year. It's a hardcover, and it's available at futurecommerce.com.
Yeah, I'm going to follow those links to each one of those in the show notes. It is actually it's a beautiful book. It's a great content, but you can tell the artistry of it too, in each one of the books. So, so cool. So talk to me just a bit. You talked a few minutes about multiplayer. Like what's the future of future commerce? What's on the radar?
Yeah. So, the future of future commerce. Well, we do have, so many working, theories. So beyond just the work that we do, to think about the future, we have to have theories about the future. So we put some of those into writing. We do think that the world is becoming more multiplayer. So just look at what happens in youth trends. More kids spend more time in video games now, especially as a communication medium. When my kids do their homework in the Florida public school system, they communicate through things like Google Slides. They build projects together in Google Slides as a collaboration medium. They are in Google Docs together. They are multiplayer by default. And they hang out in Roblox together. They're in Minecraft building together. I think the multiplayer dynamic today, as we're recording, I don't want to timestamp this, but Figma is a design tool, just went live on this New York Stock Exchange in a IPO. They were the very first multiplayer design tool. The world is becoming multiplayer. That is just true. And I think commerce is also becoming multiplayer. That's something that we're seeing and contending with. The truth, though, is that the multiplayer isn't just humans. It's also AI agents, and AI agents are working in hordes and in droves to work on behalf of a singular person to buy things, research things, and brands are going to have to contend with the fact that, most of the traffic on the internet is not human in the next 2 to 3 years. And that's okay. I think you have to appeal to a bot so that the human eventually gets the bot to buy a thing for you. You have a new type of a customer. It's scary, but that's just the future. Yeah. We talk about those sorts of things at a annual event series that I sort of think of as TED for culture. And that's called Visions. That's our, big summit platform. We do it every year at the Museum of Modern Art in New York City. And we had a big, sellout event. It was awesome. And we have, cultural analysts, ethnographers, experts from every region of society, from architecture and to human behavior to, people who are experts in, like spirituality, like wild facets of spirituality, we had the world's foremost leading expert on fictosexuality, which is, folks who, develop amorous relationships with things, inanimate, characters like anime characters and that sort of thing. We need to understand these wild waves and swings in culture, not just from a brand leader perspective so that we can react to them, but I think the human condition is more varied and more complex than we really realize. And that's something that we need to take stock of. So I'm helping this generation of leaders navigate that. And I think that that's also causing a bit of a crisis of conscience for a lot of people who feel responsible for having led many people into it. Yeah. And so we're trying to figure out how to navigate through it.
It's really interesting thinking about that visions conference and so forth. There's probably a lot of listeners in the faith space on this podcast, pastors, ministry leaders, nonprofit leaders, but sometimes they might disconnect commerce from what's going on in the faith space. But all those things you just said there, and you've said it multiple times, culture actually drives commerce. And so even from a faith space, understanding what's going on in the commerce space actually helps ministry leaders so forth to be able to communicate more to the people that they're trying to influence to. Because really, in a sense, faith is kind of a sales thing, right? You're trying to sell the greatest truth there is. So it just hit me like the connection there also between the faith space and commerce would be really powerful.
And something to hold over to is just think about if you do any sort of counseling work whatsoever, how much of your time is spent reconciling with the reality that a lot of our modern issues stem from the things that we're exposed to through messages that come through social media, messages and the challenges that are brought through, things from modern dating, brands, not having enough, the lack or the what to spend money on, gambling, the amount of gambling that's happening in our culture at the moment, addiction, sex addiction. There's from every facet of what we're talking about has an element of commercial motive behind it. Yeah. And that is just the truth.
That's good. Yeah.
And every part of that, by the way, has some sort of like marketing team behind it and is working at scale to grab someone's attention.
And now an army of AI bots helping you do it. So
well, that's and that's the other challenge too, right? It's like it used to be limited only by people's human capabilities, and we're no longer limited by that.
Yeah. Well, man, Phil, this has been really fascinating, and every time I'm with you, you just kind of blow my mind. We might need to have you back on and have another conversation down the space because there's a lot more stuff I wanted to get through, but we didn't get to. But thank you so much for being on the podcast. I'm going to put all the links to how to connect with you, Future Commerce, all your journals in our show notes so people can check all that stuff out.
Appreciate it. Thank you, James.
I'm so thankful for Phillip sharing his wisdom, creativity, and big picture perspective with us today. I'm reminded again that leadership isn't just about building organizations, it's about shaping culture. And that requires both courage and foresight. Okay, one key takeaway for me is this. Leaders who understand the forces shaping culture will be better positioned to influence it with integrity. So whether you lead a company, a team, or a community, the choices you make ripple far beyond your bottom line. They impact identity, values, and the future we're all building together. So if you'd like to go deeper into Phillip's work, you can check out Future Commerce at futurecommerce.com. And don't miss his stunning annual journals like Lore, Archetypes, and Muses. I'll link everything in the show notes so you can explore it for yourself. And don't forget to experience the 5-day leadership reset at livelyLast.com/reset to get more clarity and momentum in your leadership. You can also sign up for Rooted, our weekly email, by texting GROW, GROW, to 66866. And let's connect. Follow me at The James Duvall on Instagram or LinkedIn. I'd love to hear how this conversation is shaping your leadership. And finally, if this episode encouraged you, would you take 30 seconds to rate, review, and share it? Your feedback helps more leaders discover the show. Remember, how you live is how you lead. So this week, go live with intention, lead with courage, and make your life count.